starts telling me that by emptying the pool into the lot, we were going to create a sinkhole. It was going to take out the highway. It was going to kill some people, and we were going to go to prison. So the entire night he's saying this over and over again. The next night I get home and I say, do you still think that we're going to create a sinkhole? And he said, no, we just killed everybody on the planet.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free safe space for people to share, learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm your host, Todd Runnebaum, suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. I've got another fantastic episode here with a lovely young lady named Shirley McLaughlin. And Shirley reached out to me wanting to know some information about what I knew about post-COVID psychosis. And I said, what the hell is that? So we got to talking, and I invited her onto the podcast because she has a very heartbreaking but fascinating story about her husband, who apparently has been diagnosed and is suffering with post-COVID psychosis. So she'll explain all of that. She is an incredibly sweet, lovely, and just a very charming lady. So I'm so glad she did reach out. And if you want to reach out, go ahead. My email is bunnyhugspodcast@gmail.com currently. You can also reach out and buy me a coffee or get some merch. All that stuff's in the show notes. Really, if you could rate, review, and share the podcast with people, that would be fantastic. Don't forget, this episode is also on YouTube, on my channel, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health. And every Thursday, there's a new episode with Nick and I doing it's called Mental Health Hot Takes. No, that's not it either. It's called Mental Health Headline Hot Takes with Nick and Todd. But for now, and without further ado, I give you Shirley McLaughlin.
I've gone through this whole story about my husband so many times. I used to cry a lot when I told the story, but I've told it so many times in the last year and a half, trying to find help. So I just kind of go through it now. So one thing you should know about my husband is he's worked at the same job for 33 years before this happened. He got the job when he was 20. He was 53 when this happened. He had 33 years of perfect attendance, never called in sick, never left early, never showed up late. The only time he took off was vacation that he put in 2 weeks' notice. Never got sick. He said it was because he ate a lot of mud when he was a kid. He had a really high immune system. Anyway, in September, he got COVID. The only reason he tested is because his son had COVID. He didn't have any symptoms. He just didn't want anybody to get sick because of him. So he took a test. It was positive. I was in Vegas with my sisters and my mom at the time, and I was going to be going straight from Vegas to a conference in Tacoma for work, and so I was going to be gone 10 days total. When I left, he didn't have COVID, and when I got back, he was already through it and better. So I don't know if there was something different about the strain that he got, because I wasn't near him, so I didn't get it, or if it's just him. Anyway, he got COVID. He called in, said he was taking 5 days off just so nobody else would get sick, because he's always thinking about other people. And the day after he tested positive, he felt like he had a cold, which he's not used to. He doesn't get sick, but he described it as like he had a cold for about 12 hours. And then that went away. And the rest of the 5 days, he was fine. So he was kind of frustrated that he couldn't go to work because he was fine. But he ended up going to work. Exactly 2 weeks later, he slept in the basement because it's cold and dark. He was working graveyard. And he usually comes upstairs at about 6:30 and he eats something, and then he leaves at about 9:30. So he came up the stairs, and right at the top of the stairs, he stopped and he said, "Everybody's going to hate me. Everybody's going to hate me. Everybody's going to hate me." And he was shaking. He was trembling. His heart was racing. He gave me a big hug, really tight. We were just standing at the top of the stairs for 10 minutes while he kept saying, everybody's going to hate me. Everybody's going to hate me. Everybody's going to hate me. You also need to know this man, not only is he the most selfless person on the planet and the sweetest person on the planet, as far as I'm concerned, he's also the calmest, very zen, very laid back, very opposite of me. You know, the yin yang thing. I think that's true because I'm up here and he was always downhill. Silver lining, positive attitude, always saying everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be great, don't worry. It doesn't do any good to worry. Why are you worried? Everything's going to be fine. All of that. So my family calls him the baby whisperer, like the horse whisperer, but babies. And the reason is because he has such a calming vibe. He can get any baby to stop crying instantly, even when their mom or dad can't get them to stop crying. Every baby in the family, when we go to a family event and the baby's crying and the mom's trying to calm the baby down, they say, "Oh, give him to Dwayne. He'll calm him down."
I do the exact opposite.
You do?
Yeah, I can make any baby cry.
Oh. You make them cry instead? Yeah.
I can.
That's just the way he is. He's just zen, calm. So all of a sudden he's shaking and his heart is beating fast and he's saying, everybody's going to hate me. Everybody's going to hate me. Everybody's going to hate me, and squeezing me really tight. You know, last I knew everything was fine. He was his normal self. So this was like a switch that went off all of a sudden. So of course I was freaked out. Like, what is going on? And I kept saying, why is everybody going to hate you? What's going on? After about 10 minutes, I got him to come sit down on the couch. And he said, I'm having a heart attack. I'm going to die. It's all my fault. He said his heart had been racing on and off for the last 2 weeks, which at that time I didn't connect. But this was exactly 2 weeks after he had COVID. This was October 4th. But I didn't connect it at that time. But he said his heart's been going on, racing on and off for 2 weeks. He didn't tell anybody. He didn't want to worry anybody. And now he's going to die. And it's his fault and everybody's going to hate him. So I got him to call in sick, which was very difficult because he had just taken 5 days off 2 weeks before that. And he was not used to calling in sick. And I took him to the emergency room. They checked him. They did the D-dimer test where they checked for blood clots. They checked his heart. They did an EKG, all of the stuff. They said he was fine. He wasn't having a heart attack. He didn't have a blood clot. So he went from being worried that he was going to die to saying, oh, now we're going to get a $50,000 hospital bill and we're not going to be able to pay it. Just switched his concern, just flipped to that. So then I had to convince him that we're not going to get a $50,000 hospital bill. We both have very good insurance. It's not going to happen. The next day he seemed normal, kind of, a little bit more anxious than usual, but he went to work. In hindsight, I should not have let him go to work, but he thought I don't know. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I only saw him for a little bit because sometimes he would sleep right up until he had to leave for work. He went to work and then he came home in the morning saying that he was going to be fired and that he messed with some part of the machinery. He works at a factory that makes styrofoam. And he said that he messed with some part of the machinery and that an alarm went off and that they sent him home and now he's going to be fired. Now, mind you, not only did he work there for 33 years, but he was also a supervisor. And he worked in the same department that whole time. He knew what he was doing. It was not, a new system or anything like that. So he was spiraling again like he was 2 nights before that about being fired.
Did that actually happen? Like, did he actually mess with some machinery?
I still don't know.
Oh, okay.
I still don't know if that was true because he never went back after that. We went straight to using his sick leave up and then getting the disability. He hasn't been back to work, so I still don't know if that was true or not. So I took him to the emergency room. I took him to behavioral health at the hospital. I didn't know what to do. I've never dealt with anything like this before. Like, I've had my own mental health struggles. as my daughter has and several people I know, but not instantly like this. The behavioral health people got him a same-day appointment with his primary care doctor. And I was trying to explain that this was more than just anxiety. It was more than anxiety. I could tell that it was more than just anxiety. And it was more than a panic attack. Unfortunately, his doctor treated it as just like, no, he's just got anxiety. So he put him on Abilify, which is the anti-anxiety. Then later that night, he was going on and on and on again about his organs were shutting down. He has diabetes. He didn't tell anybody. It's his fault. Now all of his organs are shutting down, and now he's going to die. And he's not just saying this, he's saying it in a way like, this is the truth. This is fact. It was different than just saying it. Like even the look on his face is different. The look in his eyes are different. It's like a different person all of a sudden. He was taking the Abilify for a couple of weeks. It wasn't doing any good. His doctor just raised the dose and then raised the dose again and kept saying, give it a couple more weeks, give it a couple more weeks. And then all of a sudden he did this thing that I have since learned was actually a psychological emergency. He had a Fitbit and he was pacing so much around and around and around, just inside of the house in circles, that according to his Fitbit, he did 60,000 steps, which is 30 miles, according to Fitbit, in like a 6 to 8 hour period. Just going in circles in the living room, basically. 60,000 steps. So apparently that's something, I don't remember the name of it, but something where like you're trying to get out of your skin. I wish I remembered the name of it. But he was trying to basically get out of his skin, is the way the psychiatrist described it. And he said, unfortunately, if I had taken him to the emergency room at that moment, the emergency room wouldn't have seen it as an emergency. But a psychiatrist would have seen it as an emergency. But the emergency room would have just given him like something to calm him down and sent me home. This is all in the first couple of months from September leading up to Thanksgiving. During that time, he would go through periods where about 2 weeks he would eat everything in sight, constantly hungry, snacking on everything he could find, and then going on and on about how he's getting fat. And then he would go about 2 weeks where I couldn't get him to eat or drink anything. And he would say that there's no room, and he kept pointing at his diaphragm and his upper stomach and saying, there's no room. There's no room. There's no room for anything. I couldn't even get him to drink a sip because he kept saying that. It was almost impossible to take his medication. The only reason he does is because he trusts me so much that he will do whatever I say when it comes to trying to help him, which is good. Every appointment I've taken him to, every medication I've told him he needs to take, he goes. He doesn't fight me. Even though he might say this isn't going to do any good, he still goes. He just does it because he trusts me, which honestly is a lot on my shoulders. So he trusts me explicitly and he does whatever I ask him to do, but it's a lot on me. But I'm just doing the best I can because I just want him to get better. He would do that for me. That's what counts. He never lost his sense of humor, though. Very witty, very quick-witted. He still makes me laugh, believe it or not. He's a totally different person, but he still makes me laugh. He's still selfless, still cares about everybody else, and he still makes me laugh. So I'm thankful for that. I don't know how he does it. He's just quick-wit. And
some of us are just born with it.
Yeah. Some of us, you're lucky. So anyway, at Thanksgiving time, he wouldn't eat anything. I was still trying to figure out what was going on. I thought maybe he was having some kind of issue because he wasn't sleeping very well. The last couple of years of working graveyard was getting to him because he was getting older, and the older you get, the harder it is to work graveyard. So he was having difficulty sleeping. So I kept thinking, if he takes enough time off and gets enough sleep and gets his body switched over, he'll start feeling better. And then maybe we can say he can't work graveyard anymore. If you want this man back that's been with her for 33 years and is a supervisor and knows what he's doing, you're going to have to put him on days. That's what I thought was going to happen. So I went to my sister's house for Thanksgiving. He wouldn't eat. She saw the way he was acting. She's known him for 7 years also. She saw how he was acting nervous and anxious, and he wouldn't eat. So on my way home, which is about 2 hours from her house, my phone's blowing up the whole way, like text and text and text and text. And I'm like, why is Bobby texting me? I can't read it. I'm driving, which he's also afraid to drive all of a sudden. So he hasn't driven in a year and a half either. He doesn't know why. He's just afraid to drive, which is frustrating to him. She sent me articles about post-COVID psychosis, which at that time I had never heard of. There's several articles from the peer-reviewed scholarly articles. Some of them are for the National Institute of Health, the University of Washington Medical School, Mayo Clinic, things like that. There's a doctor in New York we might have to fly to New York at some point. Always wanted to go. I could see, cats or something while I'm there. Lion King or something. Anyway,
legit research has been done on this, and
yes,
legit articles and legit hospitals are looking into it and stuff. So
yes, yeah. And there's a lot of post-COVID clinics opened up. Unfortunately, most of them have ran out of money and closed because the COVID money is not flying in from the government anymore. The government has moved on. They've moved on to other things. I won't say what. They don't have money for COVID anymore. So a lot of them have closed down. There is research going on. A message to Wendy Zuckerman at Psychosis at one point. She replied back and said that this kind of thing has happened with every flu virus that we've had. H1N1, the bird flu, the Spanish flu, all of them has caused some kind of psychosis. But with COVID, it's more people than those ones. More people are getting it, but not enough people for enough people to know about it. Right. For enough people to have heard about it. But still more people than the other flu viruses. So it turns out it's actually a post-flu virus psychosis, even though it's caused by this strain of COVID. Like I said, I don't know if it's the strain or just his body, his immune system.
Or just a virus in general. Maybe all strains of COVID could potentially have done it. It's just...
Yeah. So I was looking at an article earlier that I'm excited about because one of the doctors at the post-COVID clinic, it researches, it's called neurological, I don't know how to pronounce it, SEQUUELAE of COVID-19. Sequelae or something like that. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Sure.
But apparently, it's usually contracted from insect bites. So I'm wondering if it's related to Lyme disease. Because Lyme disease could cause a lot of neurological effects also. But she studies that. I don't know if that's the doctor he's going to be working with, but I was looking at articles earlier today on that also. And it talks about COVID causing it. There's one case where a lady, I think she was in her 30s, never had any mental health issues prior. She had COVID, but she was not in the ICU or anything like that. And she drives up to a drive-through window at a fast food restaurant, and she hands her kids, she has 3 little kids with her, and she starts handing them through the window at the fast food restaurant, saying, somebody's behind me, they're going to kidnap my kids. Call 911. Somebody's going to kidnap my kids. You need to protect them. There was nobody behind her. And she was handing her kids through the window. So there's a lot of stories like that. There doesn't seem to be any differentiation, or anyway, I can't say that word, between people that didn't have any symptoms and people that were in the ICU on breathing machines. Doesn't seem to be any difference on who gets this psychosis. People that had the vaccine, people that didn't have the vaccine, it doesn't seem to make any difference. Most of them, though, happen, from what I've researched, within 1 to 3 weeks of having COVID. And this was exactly 2 weeks. And most of them are people that did not have previous mental health issues. What I've also learned is the first 6 months, I guess a lot of the treatment is high dose antipsychotics. And the first 6 months, either people get better and go back to work and everything's normal and they're back to their normal selves, or they continue on with the same type of COVID psychosis, or it turns into schizophrenia, OCD, ADHD. I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but at this point, he's been diagnosed now, as of last September, as COVID-induced atypical schizophrenia.
Wow, because of
Schizoaffective.
COVID. Because of COVID, like, was he first diagnosed with the COVID psychosis and then it graduated
Yes.
into the post-COVID
Yeah, so
schizophrenia?
I'll back up a little bit. So I went to
Sure.
several doctors after I got these articles. Because before that, I thought it was just anxiety. So we were going with what his primary care doctor was giving him, even though I didn't feel like it was helping. But once I got that article, I had a focus, a path, instead of, because I knew in my heart and my mind that it wasn't just anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped a lot, my sister finding those. I wouldn't have even connected it. And I think there might be a lot of people out there that are in the same boat, that are not connecting the two. So I took him to several psychiatrists, not psychiatrists, I'm sorry. I couldn't get in with a psychiatrist until March of 23. It took a long time. We don't have enough psychiatrists anywhere, but especially in Wenatchee. We don't have enough. So it takes a long time to get into one. So in the meantime, you're seeing social workers and counselors and
psychologists,
nurse practitioners and things like that.
Oh, gotcha.
And nothing against them. A lot of times they know just as much, if not more, than the doctors, especially nurses. I don't really blame them because they didn't know either. But they were saying things like, we had one counselor took him to, and I said that before this started, he was having trouble sleeping. So at first I thought it was connected to that. So she immediately, within 5 minutes of being in her office, said that he had bipolar 2. Within 5 minutes of talking to her, just from that one symptom. And I said, no, he wasn't sleeping because he was working graveyard. He was getting older. It was harder for him to sleep during the day. And she said, well, you said he's not sleeping. That's what bipolar 2 people do. They don't sleep for a long time, and then they sleep, and then they don't sleep. And I said, no. And I was trying to explain to her that he thought he was dying, that he thought he was having a heart attack, that he was not eating, that he was pacing constantly. And I said, no, we're going to go see somebody else, because I knew it wasn't that, even though I'm not an expert.
Good idea.
So during this time, one of the main things is that he's had psychosis, where he has these delusions and fixed false beliefs. I have learned so much in this last year and a half. So between, this whole time, but mostly between September of 22 and September of 23, at one point he thought that I took him to the emergency room because I thought he was dehydrated, because it was one of those times that he wouldn't eat or drink anything. He was very lethargic. He was just laying in bed. He wouldn't get up. I dragged him to the emergency room. But on the way to the emergency room, he was pulling at his skin on his arm like this constantly the whole way and saying, I'm too dehydrated. It's too late for me. I'm going to die. There's nothing they could do. And he actually said, why are we even going? I'm going to get there and they're going to look at me and they're going to say, you're too dehydrated. You waited too long. You're going to die. There's nothing we can do. That's what he kept saying. He actually believed that they were going to look at him and tell him it was too late, that he was going to die. It turned out he was so dehydrated, he needed 1 bag of fluids, which is not much. One of the times I took him, he needed 4 bags. That was dehydrated. But this time, when he thought he was going to die of dehydration, he only needed 1 bag. So it wasn't even as bad as I thought it was. But the whole time we were sitting there, he was pulling at his skin. I know I've heard of that. I know there's a name for that. When people that have mental health issues are like pulling at their skin a lot. So when they told us that he was discharged, he was like, they can't discharge me. I'm going to die. I'm dehydrated. They can't just send me home. One other time, his dad was in the hospital. He called us at 6 o'clock in the morning and said that he needed us to bring the batteries to his hearing aid from his house because when the nurses come in and talk to him, he can't hear them. So we went to his house and we got the batteries and we took it to the hospital. When we walked in the hospital, we saw the sign that said visiting hours 8 a.m. And at this time it was 6:30. Right away, he said, we have to leave. We're going to be arrested. We can't be here. Visiting hours at 8 a.m. And I said, well, we have to take him his batteries. That's not talking about people dropping off things for people. But he wouldn't let it go. The whole way up to that floor, the whole way down the hall, we saw several nurses that said good morning. He was saying, we got to go, we got to go, we got to go. We're not supposed to be here. We're going to get in trouble. We're not supposed to be here. We were in the hospital room with his dad. I was waiting for him to put the batteries in to make sure he got what he needed. He was saying that the whole time, the whole way out the door. And then for 2 straight weeks, he believed that the hospital was going to eventually look at the video footage, see that we were there outside of visiting hours, come to the house and arrest us. That's what they were going to do. And that was set in his mind. There was no changing that. After 2 weeks of saying that, I said, are you still worried about this happening? And he said, no, because if it was going to happen, it would have happened already. So that's when he was able to drop it, is when he realized it would have happened by now.
He got away with it. That must have felt good for him.
Oh, yeah.
Like, sticking it to the man.
Yes. He's such a rebel, too. Oh, my goodness. I'm very sarcastic, by the way. He's the opposite. He likes to follow the rules. Anyway, we are yin and yang. Anyway, there was several weeks in a row where he was walking around the house saying, we're going to be homeless. We're going to be out on the street. We're going to be living under the bridge. And while I was at work, every day while I was at work, he was walking around looking at everything and trying to figure out what we're going to do with all the stuff. Where is his son going to go? Where are the animals going to go? How are we going to get by? He sincerely believed that we were going to be homeless within a month. At that point, the house was not only almost paid off, but he had never been late on the house payment. And the reason it was almost paid off is because he worked a lot of overtime. And every time he worked overtime, when he would get his check, he would take that overtime money and go to the bank and put it on the principal for the house. Every single time. So it was almost paid off at that point. And he had never been late. And he still believed that they were going to come take it away within a month. Several points in time, he thought that we didn't have enough food, even though I was showing him that he could see the food, but he still was convinced that we didn't have enough food. So we would go to the grocery store, we would get all the stuff that we needed, and then he would stand in the middle of the aisle and say, this isn't enough. We're going to starve. This isn't enough food. We need more food. What are we going to eat? So I would end up filling the cart with stuff that we would use, but we didn't necessarily need, just to make him feel like we would have enough food.
Bunny Hugs and Mental Health is supported by Co-op. I've been a member of my local co-op, Sherwood Co-op, for about 20 years. If you live in Western Canada, especially the prairies, or spent any time here, you've probably fueled up or bought groceries at a co-op. You might even have a co-op number, or 2, or 3. You know if you know. But co-op is not just a gas bar or grocery store. Although co-op is those things too, it's a different kind of business. Co-op members are owners and success is shared with everyone. Your co-op doesn't benefit one person or one corporation. Your co-op was built for everyone. Your co-op was built for your community. Learn more about co-op and find a location near you at co-op.crs. Would you get really frustrated with him, or were you like super gentle, be like, sweet, like, honey, like you try to reason with him?
So
like, that must have been frustrating though, to try and reason with someone that is not grasping reality.
I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I'm doing any of this. I have been extremely patient through all of this with him. And even though it is frustrating on the inside, I have not shown that. I'm very gentle with him. Even in the middle of the store, I'd be like, okay, well, do you want to go get more food? We have enough, but if you feel better, if we go get more, we can go get more. And then we would get more. Is that enough? And I waited for him to say, okay. I feel like he would do the same for me. He doesn't get frustrated. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't have a mean bone in his body. I try to remember that this is how he would be if it was me. He would be very kind and very patient. And so he deserves the same thing. And that, a lot of people have said they don't know how I'm so patient.
Maybe if you yelled at him, it would be better. Like, you idiot! We have so much food! And then he'd just be like, oh.
That's funny.
I'm kidding. I don't know. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate. Maybe if you try the opposite.
The opposite of what we've been doing. That's a good plan. People that might be going through this right now, I have no idea that it might be connected to COVID. And they either don't have anybody at home, which a lot of people don't when they come home from work, or they don't have somebody that's, not to blow my own horn, but that's as understanding as I am. I'm very understanding when it comes to mental health issues and things that people can't help. If you can't help it, I'm very understanding with that kind of stuff. I jumped right into trying to figure out what was going on. And as soon as I thought, oh, it might be connected to COVID, I jumped right into figuring that out and taking them to doctors and everywhere I can to figure it out. So some people have said to me that if I wasn't there for him, I don't know what would have happened. I think he would have ended up homeless.
Or in a home or
something. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, one time he called me at work and said, I figured it out. He never calls me at work. He doesn't call me at work. He never does. He texts me, but he never calls me. And he called me all of a sudden, so I answered. And he said, I figured it out. And I said, what? And he said, we're all starving ourselves. All of us. And he started naming his son and his son's girlfriend and my daughter and our granddaughter. We have a granddaughter named Emma. She'll be 4 on Thursday. And we have another one on the way.
I'm cutting that out.
Okay.
No.
We have another one on the way that'll be here in June. And so we have,
congratulations.
My husband loves babies. Not only do babies love him, he loves them. He wanted to be a pediatrician when he was growing up. And so that's another thing that breaks my heart is that he doesn't have the energy to play with our granddaughter like he did. He used to play with her all the time. He still plays with her, but it's not the same. He doesn't have energy. He's drained all the time.
How old is Dwayne?
He just turned 55 in January. He was 53 when all this started. Anyway, so back to the psychosis. So the worst instance is, so we had to drain our pool. And we have a big pool. It's 33,000 gallons. It's 36 by 18 feet. The pool place had told us that before they come service it, we had to drain it. It was in May, so it didn't have any chemicals in it yet. But they said we had to drain it, pressure wash it, and refill it, and they were going to come service it. So his brother works at a place where he can rent equipment. He rented a sump pump and some fire hose. We were going to drain it into the storm drain because it didn't have any chlorine or anything in it at that time. My husband was saying, we're going to kill all the fish in the river if we do that. So I talked to the public works director where I work. He's friends with the president of the storm water division, where all the water goes in storm drain. He talked to him. They both said it was fine to drain it into the storm drain because there was no chemicals in it. But Dwayne would not let me do that. He was so sure we were going to kill all the fish. So his brother and I decided that we would drain the pool into this big lot that we had behind our house that was about a half acre. It was 90 degrees outside. The ground was very dry. And we figured if we move the hose around constantly, every few minutes, move the hose around, it'll be fine. That's what we decided to do because he wouldn't let us do it in the storm drain. He wouldn't eat or drink. He was out there it took like 5 hours to do, moving the hose every like 10 seconds because he was so worried about what was going to happen. After we did that, he starts telling me that by emptying the pool into the lot, we were going to create a sinkhole It was going to take out the highway. It was going to kill some people, and we were going to go to prison. So the entire night he's saying this over and over again. We're going to kill people. We're going to go to prison. It's going to take the highway with it. All in all, over and over again. The next night I get home and he says, and I say, do you still think that we're going to create a sinkhole and that's going to take the highway? And he said, no, we just killed everybody on the planet. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, we killed everybody on the planet. Everybody on the planet is going to die because we drained all of that dirty water, which means it had algae in it, into the groundwater. Now everybody on the planet is going to die. And he was saying this like he was saying before, like this was every fiber of his being believed that we had just killed everybody on the planet and there was nothing we could do about it. I don't know. I can't imagine, but I don't know if you can imagine what that could be like to feel like you just killed everybody on the planet. It just breaks my heart to even imagine how he was feeling. 2 straight weeks, just like with the hospital. He was saying, we killed everybody on the planet. I was talking to him about war and famine and pandemics and all of that stuff that did not kill everybody on the planet. He still thought we had done it. And then about 2 weeks, I asked him, I was talking to him about every night. And then finally he said, no, I guess if it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. And then he let it go. It was about the same kind of thing. All of a sudden he decided, no, I guess not.
I find it kind of funny that because it sounds like kind of like dementia in a way, but with dementia, it's sometimes you're just confused or you think somebody is somebody else and whatever. But it always seems like it's something drastic and negative with him. It's always like some kind of catastrophe is about to happen.
That's a good point. It was all negative and all drastic. And before he was, like I said, silver lining, positive attitude. So it is strange that it was the other side of the coin all of a sudden. That's what I mean when I say he's a different person, except for his humor. His humor's still there. Quick wit. Makes me laugh all the time.
He's not always paranoid and thinking everything's catastrophic. Like sometimes he's...
It's hard to tell.
Kind of zoned out, but he's still witty and...
Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. I don't always know what's going on in his mind because I feel like he's somebody that doesn't want to worry anybody. So I don't know if there's things going on in his mind that he's not telling me because he doesn't want to worry me. For instance, when we fill out that form, every single time we go to a psychiatrist that says you have to mark 0 to 4 on these different things. And there's one that thoughts that I would be better off dead. He always marks 0 on that. Or thoughts of killing myself. He always says 0. But I don't know that if he actually felt like that he would not mark 0 anyway to not scare me.
Right.
So I worry about that when I leave him alone. But no matter how many times I ask him, he says, no, I'm not that kind of person. I would never do that. But I don't know that he would say that he would.
Right. But he would tell you that he thinks you guys killed everybody. So maybe he would tell you that.
Maybe.
That's hard to say. I mean, it's unpredictable what he's thinking.
Yeah, so he says more to me than he does to anybody else. He tells me everything that I know of. You're right. If he was holding stuff back so that he doesn't worry me, he wouldn't have told me that. That makes me feel better. Thank you. Because sometimes I worry that he's just trying to protect me because he would do that. But when we go to the doctor, he says, oh, I'm fine. So then I have to do all the talking because I say, no, actually, this is the stuff he's been saying. So I have to do all the talking and all the appointments because he tells me everything. And then he clams up when he gets in front of the doctor and doesn't want to say anything.
Does he remember thinking about the stuff? Like if you bring it up like now to him, it'd be like, remember when you thought we killed everyone on Earth? Would he be like, no? Or would he be like, yeah, I remember that?
Yeah. He has memory issues and he doesn't remember everything that happened over the last year and a half, especially the first 6 months or so when it was really bad. We've seen so many doctors because I'm just trying to figure this out. Mm-hmm. He doesn't always look like he knows what I'm talking about. He looks like he's kind of going along with it, but he doesn't actually remember it. But he believes me.
It's like the first time he's hearing it too.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes I say, do you remember doing this? And he says, well, yeah, I guess you said I did that, so I guess so. But that's not the same as remembering. He's always in his head when we like try to go to a hockey game or a concert or something. You can tell he's in his head the whole time. He's not paying attention to what's going on. He's just in his head a lot. And when I say, what are you thinking about? He goes, ah, like that. And I say, well, what's that mean? He says, everything at once, everything. I'm thinking about like money and how we're going to get by and all this. But he always goes, when I ask him, like, because I think his mind is going like this. And I think that's the problem. His mind is just spinning about everything that's going to happen that he can't control.
But the sex is great.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, but the sex is still great.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe I'll cut that out.
Oh my goodness.
So has he had any kind of treatment then?
So
other than meds?
Yeah, they tried all different kinds of meds. One of the medications gave him twitches in his lips. I don't remember what it's called. And they said if he didn't stop taking it, it would be permanent. That was haloperidol. He took Seroquel, and that gave him orthostatic hypotension, which is where your blood pressure drops dramatically when you stand up. He broke his nose and his pinky during that time.
Wait, was he picking his nose with his pinky?
No, 2 different times.
Oh, I see.
Oh, my goodness. No.
I use my pinky sometimes.
You got tiny nostrils?
It's thinner. It gets up there further. Anyway, treatments.
No, he fell and broke his pinky, and then he was in the hospital, and then they figured out it was the Seroquel. He fell flat on his face at the doctor's office and hit his nose on the desk and broke his nose. He's had a terrible, terrible time. Then they tried TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. You go every day for 17 minutes for 6 weeks. After about 2 weeks, they decided it wasn't helping. It was actually making him more paranoid in some ways, more anxious. The doctor said that he thought he should try ECT, which is electroconvulsive therapy.
For those that don't know, it's like electric shock therapy.
Yeah, they used to call it shock therapy. And they don't call it that anymore because it gave it a bad connotation. People think about the movies like One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, and they say, no, I'm not getting that. But it's not like that. It's different. People don't know they still do it. They say, oh my goodness, they still do that? Yes, and it's still very effective. And we went to the Swedish hospital in Seattle, which is part of University of Washington, to do it. It was 3 times a week for 6 weeks. And Seattle's about 2.5 hours away. So I took PFML. You in Canada probably don't know what that is, but it's paid family medical leave. You can get up to 12 weeks to take care of somebody that has an injury or an illness. And they pay you like 80% of your pay, so you don't get paid the whole amount, but it was enough. So I took him to ECT 3 times a week and for 6 weeks, and then 2 times a week, and then 1 time a week. And then they said it wasn't helping anymore. He had plateaued. Everything it was going to help with, it had done. Since he got the ECT, which I think ended last September, I think, he doesn't have the psychosis as much anymore. He still has some fixed false beliefs. Like he says that he never sleeps. He says that he hasn't slept in 1.5 years at all. Not a wink, even though I've seen him sleep. I've heard him sleeping. He does not sleep. However, if you press him on it, he will say, I know it's not possible. I know it's not possible for somebody to not sleep for over 1 year, but I don't sleep. And he gets kind of frustrated when people don't believe him. I feel bad when I say that because I don't want him to think I don't believe him. But he also knows that it's not possible. And he still thinks we're going to run out of money and be homeless. So that's still there. But he doesn't have the things like we killed everybody on the planet. We're going to get arrested. Everybody's starving. He's dying. Those kinds of things have gone away as far as I know. Like I was saying before, I don't know if he would tell me because he wouldn't want to worry me. But as far as I can tell, Most of the psychosis has gone away. However, as of September is when his doctor changed his diagnosis from post-COVID psychosis to COVID-induced atypical schizophrenia, because he still has the fixed false beliefs.
But no,
Aphasia, I
like
think it's
voices
called.
or hallucinations or nothing like that. It's not.
Yeah, that's why it's atypical, because there's no
Gotcha.
visual audio hallucinations.
Hmm.
And so the doctor said that about 6 months after people have COVID psychosis, they either get better or it's been turning into OCD, ADHD, schizophrenia, things like that. And then he also called it schizoaffective disorder too. So he says that he can't look. The doctor, the psychiatrist he's seen that we've been seeing since March of 23, he's the only one that has believed us that this was related to COVID and that it wasn't just anxiety. He doesn't want him to drive. He says he can't work. He can't be in charge of anything. He can't be left alone being in charge of anything. He can't be in charge of other people. The doctor doesn't even want him to babysit the grandkids alone. What we're running into now is he used up all his sick leave. Then he used up the short-term disability that he has been paying into the entire time he worked at this plant. And then we were on long-term disability. And the stipulation with that is that they would continue to pay him under long-term disability through this company, through his work, as long as we followed the procedures to get Social Security disability. Once we get Social Security disability, they said the Social Security disability will pay him back to October 2022. We have to pay them back what they gave us, and then they will stop paying us and we will start getting Social Security. And they said as long as we follow the steps and do all the paperwork and appeal if we're denied, they will keep paying. So we applied for Social Security disability. We got denied, which I have heard they always do. They always deny you one time, and then you have to appeal. Supposedly that is to weed out people that don't need it. So hoping the people that don't really need it will give up and go back to work. What happens is the exact opposite. The people that don't need it are the ones that are fighting for it because they don't want to go to work. The people that don't know that they can appeal are left out and they give up. Someday I hope that changes. So they denied us. I was expecting that. I appealed. Right now it's just under reconsideration. I have no idea what step they're on or what moment they're going to decide. When I log on, it just says reconsideration, appeal received. It's been a while. So meanwhile, in February, the 1st of February, they all of a sudden, the company that he gets the disability through sends us a letter and says, this is the final payment. We don't believe that you're disabled anymore. We believe that you could go back to work and we're not going to pay you anymore.
Even though you have all the paperwork from the doctor, even though you're following the steps like they said, if you get denied, appeal it. Even though all that, even though he's been paying into it for 30 some years and he's never been sick for 30 some years, they are just saying no.
And they didn't say that that was a possibility. They never said that they might decide that. They said, as long as you follow what you're supposed to do with Social Security, and as long as you pay us back when you get Social Security disability, we will keep paying it. That's what they said. And they know we got denied. They know we appealed. They know that the appeal is in reconsideration. And apparently they have 2 blocks of time, which I have found out. They have a block of time that they say you're not able to go back to your previous employment, your previous occupation. And if they believe you're not able to go back to your previous occupation, they keep paying you. There's a certain time period, which they never told us about. It says it in the letter that says they're going to stop paying us. That he's entered into this new time period where they say, can he go back to any job? And when they get into that period of time and they decide he can actually go back to a job, that's when they stop paying. They never told us that that might happen. And we've been sending them notes. His psychiatrist says he can't work. We've sent that information. We've sent all of the doctor's notes from all of the doctors he's seen, the ECT doctors, everybody. And they suddenly decided that they're not going to pay anymore. So that has sent him back into a spiral of anxiety that's even worse now since February.
Can you hire a lawyer?
So, yeah, that's what I'm going to look into next. First, he has an appointment with the psychiatrist on Tuesday, and I'm going to take the denial letter, and his psychiatrist said that he will write a letter for us to appeal. So what we're going to do is we're going to send the letter to appeal. I don't know if I'm going to wait a little bit and see what happens with that, or if I'm just going to jump right into, because if we get an attorney, I know 80% or 75% is better than nothing, but they're going to take 20 to 25%.
Yeah, right.
And I know it's better than nothing, but it's just not right.
So now insurance companies and lawyers are making money while you guys are sitting at home sick, entitled to disability and not getting it.
So now the first time in his life, he's worked full time since he was 16. He has no income. And so now he was before saying, I'm a loser, I'm a zero, I'm worthless, I'm useless, I'm lazy, constantly putting himself down. Now it's even worse because now he doesn't have any money coming in. It's only my income. My income's enough, but he doesn't believe it's enough. And the only reason it's enough is because he hasn't built up a lot of debt. He's been very careful with his money. He's been very responsible. He doesn't have any credit card debt or car payment or anything like that. That's why we're going to be okay. But he still thinks that this is all his fault and that he is worthless.
Yeah, you might be okay, but also like if you're entitled to it and he's been paying into it for years, yeah, it'd be nice to get that. Because in a way he did earn it.
And I'm not sure if he could get unemployment or not at this point. He's never been on unemployment his entire life, and he's paid into that also. So that's another option. I'm hoping somebody will hear this and will reach out. A doctor, maybe. People going through the same thing that has found something that works.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I don't know. I don't know that his meds are really helping either. But I'm kind of afraid to have him stop taking them. I don't know what'll happen.
Right. Yeah, right. It's like the devil you know, or
the devil you don't.
Yeah.
Exactly. They've talked about ketamine, Lord. But they don't think that will help.
It'd be fun. Maybe you should try ketamine therapy.
Maybe.
Are you seeing a counselor or anything for?
Oh my goodness.
For
I need to.
Yeah, so, probably be a good idea.
I need to so much just because of all this stuff that's been going on and my own stuff that I used to go to counseling for. But I use all of my sick leave for appointments for him. And then I don't have sick leave left. And I keep saying, I'm going to just keep taking care of him, get him better. Then I'll save up some sick leave and I'll start going to counseling for myself. I didn't know it was going to be a year and a half. No, I really need to. I really do. But right now, I just talked to all of my amazing friends and my amazing family. And
hold that thought.
Uh-huh.
I have a segment. It's that time again for that Some Bunny Specialist segment where we chat about who cooperated in your mental health and I screwed it up. Your mental health journey and helped fill your emotional tank. Brought to you by the wonderful company Co-op. So you were saying.
So I don't want to leave anybody out, but my mom, Leona, is amazing. I vent to her a lot. My daughter, Kimber, is amazing. She is the strongest person I know. And she's gone through her own mental health struggles. And she is such an advocate for anybody that has any mental health struggles. She's an advocate for anybody, and she listens to anybody. She tries to help as much as she can. My sister Bobby, if she hadn't looked up this information, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have a path. And then I have a lot of amazing friends and family. I can't name all of them. There's so many of them. It would take all night, which I'm thankful for.
Nice. So it sounds like you guys have a good support system. So that's at least good. Like you said, not everybody has a support system, and to try and go through this alone or with people that aren't very supportive, that'd be pretty hard.
I have a ton of people in my corner. I have a lot of friends, and I talk to them all the time.
Was there anything you wanted to add that we didn't talk about?
I'm not sure. If I say anything about how amazing you are and how thankful I am
that'll
for
be cut
you,
anyway. So.
you're just going to cut it out.
Thank you so much, Shirley. I know it's not an easy story to tell, and I know you've been telling it to everyone that will listen. I hope you get some answers. Yeah, I hope if anyone's listening and can relate to what Shirley's going through, please reach out to Shirley or to myself, and I can get you in hold with Shirley. So yes, thank you again. We had some technical issues too when we started recording, and we had to redo a couple things. So anyway, thanks again, Shirley, for that and for your patience. And speaking of patience, if you're looking for a speaker for your corporate event, your school, your whatever you got, I am always willing, and I'm usually available to do stuff like that in person or online. So please reach out to me at bunnyhugspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Co-op, for sponsoring this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And hey, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.